In just under a year, my detective game Blackfeather has gone from a loose cluster of rectangles and glitchy textures to something moody and atmospheric. A lost town tucked away in a lush valley. Of course, there are still some rectangles waiting for their moment to be turned into beautiful buildings, but the game has come a long way. I think it's beginning to feel full of mystery and ready for keen-eyed detectives to come find the secrets within. Let's talk updates and exciting new things.
When I first started building out the town for my game, before I had anything in Unreal, I think I made one key decision that ended up saving me tons of time. See if you can spot what it is with the following story. So there I sat at my desk with a notepad and just an idea for a small town detective game. Where do I start? I just started drawing what I thought that a small town would look like. What sorts of buildings and things I would see in a small town, like a small grocery store, or a quaint little motel, or some guy living outside behind the family diner in a dumpster. Pretty soon, I had a good idea for what I thought the town was going to look like. I drew it again, but I drew it in more detail and more sure of what I thought was going to be there. And I thought it looked pretty good. And I thought, let's put this into Unreal and just see what it would feel like to run around in an area like this. I just dropped some rectangles in Unreal and I just felt what it would feel like to run around this space. After that, I was thinking, well, hey, cool, this is neat. This is a game. I can't do anything in the game, but it's a game, I guess. And then I kind of sort of getting bored of running around a bunch of rectangles. I found an asset pack that I really liked the style of, and I sort of dropped buildings in piece by piece, almost like Legos, just feeling out the town. Did you catch it? Did you catch the key decision? I'll admit it's a little bit of a trick question. The key decision was the entire story. It was iterating and prototyping. This is something I picked up from my software engineering job, but it's really applicable to anything, including making art or designing a set. The idea is to always be making progress and be making prototypes that improve something, even if it's something small. I started with that super rough draft and brainstorming session. After that, I got a little bit more detail onto the page. Then I got it into Unreal. Then I started getting real assets in there. Each one of these changes individually is not that big, but together, they came together to start creating the base of a world. After I had some assets in the game, I couldn't help but realize that it still felt a little bit empty and lifeless and just a little bit off. Sort of like Mark Zuckerberg. I couldn't put my finger on it. I just didn't understand why, and it was frustrating for a good month or so. It took me a while before something clicked. Art imitates life. This phrase is incredibly cliche and overused, but as is with most cliches, there's some truth behind it, and I think a lot of people don't understand what that truth is. I know I didn't for the longest time, being as aloof as I am. As soon as I started paying attention to the world around me, I started noticing why it was that my world looked bland. For example, there is a road in my game. This implies that my world has cars in it. Where are the cars? Where are the parking lots? Where are the sidewalks? I think I've realized that I have been interpreting the world like a child my entire life, just ignoring like 90% of things that exist. But when I opened my eyes, my mind was kind of blown at just how much crap there is in the world. This is a weird point, but like, I think it's incredibly important. Your brain may not consciously register all of those details, but they're important to making a world feel real and organic. And it's the reason why I think a lot of indie games don't feel good. Is because they just forget that like most of the world exists, but it is the small parts of the world that make it feel alive. It is the barriers next to the parking lot, implying that somebody was building this parking lot and just hasn't finished it yet. But now the answer is not the dev forgot to put the rest of the parking lot in. The answer is somebody put some barriers up because they were going to finish the parking lot. It is the bushes planted on either side of Town Hall and the flowers in the park, implying that somebody who lives in this world cared enough to just spruce up the place a little bit. It is the trash tucked into the alleyway, implying that somebody lives or works in the building next to that alley and produces trash. They come together and they create a world that feels organic, like it's lived in, which is really the goal, especially for a detective game, something where you want the player to be constantly exploring and making connections that feel like they make sense in the world. So let's get a quick rundown of what I've added to the game. First and foremost, we have a town hall now. You can never have enough quaint red brick buildings that say town hall on them. That's not true at all. You can definitely have too many town halls. I made this building completely by myself in Blender. If anybody would like to give me validation on the Blender progress I've made, please leave your oohs and ahs in the comment section below. I also put this cute little park next to Town Hall that I think is honestly just very charming. It even has these little benches throughout the walkway going through the park, one of which is in dire need of some new legs. As previously mentioned, I put some sidewalks and some cars and parking lots throughout the town, and I just did a little sprinkling of garbage, kind of like if God was Salt Bay. I also added some apartments on the corner here, a grocery store, a gas station. I've got a hospital in the corner of town where people can get their broken hooves and wings fixed. And I even have this little construction area right across the street from the beginning of the logging factory, or I guess logging area. It's a lumberyard, I guess you could say. I think that was the word I was looking for. A lot of this is a mix of assets that I found and assets that I made. Like I've said previously, I believe that buying assets can be a very good thing. It's just, you have to be careful as a developer not to throw together asset packs in a way that looks haphazard and not done on purpose. Something that I have tried to do is find asset packs that share something in common, that share an art style, or at least part of an art style. In addition, I've been sticking mostly to asset packs that I think I can personally create new assets that fit the style of. For example, these buildings that I'm using, some of which are coming from the asset pack, have these brick textures on them, which are very simple. They're just like copy-pasted little bricks across the texture. I can do that. I can make buildings look like brick buildings by just copy-pasting these bricks across the entire surface of the building. And I have for the things like Town Hall or the hospital. And dear God, whatever you do, do not become an asset flipper. I hope that asset flippers burn in hell. I think it is a despicable thing to do. Teehee. I think the town feels alive now. It feels like it's lived in, and it feels ready to explore. Of course, now I have to put things in the town to find, because right now there isn't anything. When it comes to the visual style of the game, my favorite trick that I have developed is postprocessors and shaders. Postprocessors are essentially visual filters that you can apply on top of the screen that basically change everything that the screen is seeing. This cartoon-style black outline on everything that you see is a postprocessor, as is the vignette filter and the subtle desaturation in unlit areas. Postprocessors can do so much more though. Here's a postprocessor that I accidentally created while playing around with some of the techniques, and it makes the world entirely black and white, but in a very unique way. I think using these techniques, I've been able to create a vibe that's a little bit more dreary and a little bit more mysterious, which I think pairs well with the sort of more naive, round, and soft art style that I've sort of been using up until this point. A technique that goes hand in hand with this is shaders. I sort of treat the idea of shaders as single object post-processors. I use this with all of my characters. I give them this dark, inky shadow shader, which makes them feel just a touch more dramatic. I'm still fine-tuning here, but it makes a huge difference seeing all of these effects side by side with the game sans post-processors and post-processors. And the last thing I want to talk about, some new characters. I have definitely been hard at work with more than just setting tone. I've also introduced 3 new characters to my roster since the last episode. Spencer, this little squirrel boy. He's a big fan of video games, just like me. I think you can tell which one's his favorite. And I've also introduced a couple more dapper boys. First up is David Banks. He is a golden retriever. You will never be able to guess where Mr. David Banks works. And then there's Levi. Levi doesn't have a last name yet, but he's on the city council and is a close friend of the mayor, Charles. Together, Levi and Charles have been putting together a proposal and have just won a massive grant from the National Agriculture Department to expand their logging capabilities in town. Logging is what this town was built on, and Charles is convinced that if they can expand their logging operation, it will bring new life to their small, moribund town. And they have just enough money to build a small logging museum to attempt to draw in tourists. The jury is still out on whether or not that's a good idea, or if no one will really care about a logging museum, but at least Charles is trying to bring his town out of the 19th century. And that's the first bit of public lore that I get to put out on the internet, which is pretty fun. Off screen, I have been working hard on the story and puzzles to solve, and I've got a lot of story to tell. And I'm excited to get the story out there. It's a story that's personal to me. I'll soon be at a point where I can start adding real dialogue, items, puzzles, and start to get the structure of an actual game into what is functionally just a sandbox town right now. It feels good, and it feels like I'm building skills that I love to practice. Steam new and trending page, I am coming for you probably in 2024 or 2025, but I am coming for you. Listen, look into my eyes, Steam new and trending page. I will be